Me. Thanks for having me this morning. Happy to talk to you today. I think we've got an hour scheduled, so this kind of run through, takes anywhere from 15, 20, 30 minutes, and then we'll have plenty of time for individual questions at the end. There's a lot of new stuff going on. A lot of things are still unanswered. Things change by the hour. We're getting updates, guidance changes. We thought one thing, and then last night at 11 p.m., something else came out. So things are just kind of constantly changing, but we're kind of trying to give our clients and people out there the best possible information that we have available. And, we've kind of been studying this and staying on top of this as much as we can, and having a dedicated research team working on this and giving me and other accountants I work with updates as we get them. So today we'll talk about the CARES Act that passed last Friday. And we'll also go into the disaster loan program that's been available for the past 2 or 3 weeks. And that was activated by Secretary Mnuchin of the Treasury March 16th or something like that. And so that's been active. And then this huge stimulus bill came out last Friday. And this thing is huge. Just the small business portion is $2 trillion. Overall, together, it's something like $6 trillion. So, probably the biggest stimulus bill passed by any government ever in humankind history. So it's really crazy. There's a lot of stuff in here. And the whole idea is to keep the economy going, right? And an economy only works if cash is circling around. So if people stop spending money, people stop going outside, businesses stop paying their bills, and employees, stop paying their rent, everything just kind of falls apart. So, my kind of thinking of how this is all going to play out is like, basically the first 1 or 2 months of this, right now we're already in the first month, and next month, we're in the second month. So it's kind of like the expectation is like, okay, maybe the first month people kind of live on their savings or kind of pivot or downsize or do something. And then the second month, that's when the money starts coming in, and the stimulus money, either through the disaster loan package or through the forgivable loans. And I'll talk about each one and the pros and cons and how to calculate them. And so that money starts coming in, that starts circulating, that allows business owners to continue to pay their bills. And then we just have to see what happens, in month 2, month 3, month 4. And, if we get out of it at that point, great. Otherwise, there's probably going to be another stimulus bill. So we'll just have to see what happens and try to be prepared, as best prepared as possible. So my background is I'm a CPA here in California. I have an office in San Francisco and Los Angeles. And after high school, I was with the U.S. Army and worked with the peacekeeping mission in Bosnia and Kosovo, and saw my fair share of crazy things and tragic things, and almost got killed a couple times. Then after that, I went to college, worked in real estate, construction management, and again, 2008, that all fell apart. So, we've been through crises before. Humankind, we go through crisis every so often, all the time. And so, after the financial crash, coming from a finance and a real estate background, I went into accounting, became a CPA, and 7 years ago started my own firm. And the whole idea was, my philosophy was working with business owners, specifically having that niche, working with only business owners, and really getting deep into tax strategy, making sure you have good financials in place, helping you with your bookkeeping and accounting, cash flow projections, putting tools in place that help you save money, pay less in taxes, and help you grow your business. And so when this came out, 2 or 3 weeks ago with the disaster loan announcement, I saw that in the group of accountants that I'm part of. We saw that, and we realized, our clients aren't really going to figure this all out on their own. They just don't have the time, the resources, the bandwidth, whatever. And so we decided we have to get into this. We have to help our clients. We need to research this. We need to dedicate resources to this. And so, we did that, and we have a really good understanding of the SBA loan process right now, and we have a really good understanding of the disaster loan process, and we even have a better understanding a little bit of the current forgivable loan process, maybe better than some bankers. And so, nobody's going to be an expert in all of this. This is a huge bill. This is a huge thing with lots of moving parts. But we're trying to stay ahead of it. We're trying to stay even like 3 hours ahead of anyone else to try to push information to our clients as soon as we get it and help them out. So, again, going back to when this all started, people kind of, naturally, human instinct is like go into reaction phase, right? Fight or flight. And so, you can either be overly pessimistic about the situation. That's civilization is not going to end. Or you could be a wishful thinker, and that's probably not going to end. This is not going to be done by Easter. This is going to go through April. And, so we had to think, what's an appropriate response? What's an appropriate response for our clients? How do we help our clients think of an appropriate response? And so, we're thinking, maybe the soonest, if this dies down and we start seeing some trends and we start seeing the, cures happening or people recovering, and then we can all get back to work maybe in 2 or 3 months. Worst case, the health trend continues to get worse, and this lockdown keeps happening, and the economy, we really don't get back to work for another 4, 6, 9 months. And so I think we're going to be somewhere here in the middle. I don't think, even if we got back to work in May, there's still going to be this kind of little thing to get over, this cliff to get over, because how do you just turn an economy on or off? It's like, it's just crazy. Nothing like this has ever happened before. We've never really seen how this works. But again, we want to think about, what will we do? How will we prepare ourselves? Because we don't really know. None of us are guaranteed to have a business after this. It's the truth. I'm not guaranteed to have a business in 6 months. You're not guaranteed to have a business. A lot of people are definitely not guaranteed to have jobs. A lot of things are going to change. We're going to be in a situation where it's like how we talk about post 9/11. We're going to have a post-COVID world. And so, maybe companies are going to bring back less staff because we get more into automation. Maybe some businesses won't be necessary anymore or won't be desired anymore. And, businesses have to change and think about, how do we pivot? How do we offer different service? How do we offer different product? How do we fight and keep going to, prepare ourselves, help our families, and get where we need to go. So of course, we're telling people, stay safe, and also do everything in your power to save your business. And one of the ways we're trying to help people with that is accessing these loans, these grants. And today I'm going to explain to you the details of each one, each of the components, how to calculate them, seeing if you qualify. Some businesses are going to be more qualified than others. Some businesses just have a different level of revenue or components, whether it's employees or different types of sales levels or cost of goods sold. And so for some, the calculation works more in their favor, and for some, things don't work so well in their favor. And so, but there's still help available. There's still tools you can access for whichever situation you're in. And so, we've been through disasters before, and the disaster loan program was really designed to be kind of for like one-off occurrences, like the BP oil spill or natural disasters like hurricanes, tornadoes, whatever. It wasn't really designed to be this thing where 10 million business owners all jump in at the same time and try to access funds. So there's definitely been some hurdles there, some glitches. The website crashed in the first couple of weeks. And now there's a little bit of a streamlined accessing ability. You can get on there, you can go to SBA disaster COVID website, and you can do, a quick application. And that's been easier, and you get your case number, you get your application number, and now you're in line. Now you're in line to talk to a loan officer once they get around to looking at your name and your business. But it doesn't really stop there. You know, that's where it just starts. And so you have to be prepared with your financials. You have to have the forms filled out, because ideally you want to be able to give that loan officer a complete package as best as possible, because there's just going to be tons of people in there, and everybody's trying to fill out one form at a time, and you know, it's just going to put you to the bottom of the pile. So having a complete package in place is going to help you with that. And so I'll just skip ahead a little bit here. So, you know, we want to help you put together a flawless application as best as we can, and we know all the forms that need to go into that. And if you want, you know, at the end of the call, I can tell you all those forms that we know about so far, but they're also on the SBA website. But again, it doesn't really help you just to know what the forms are unless you're filling them out correctly, and unless you are properly displaying your financials in a way that's going to make sense to the loan officer. You know, people, you know, just in my normal business and providing bookkeeping and accounting services to companies, people are a mess half the time. You know, people have 10-page long P&Ls that don't really make sense. People have balance sheets that have wrong information on them. You know, so now's the time to get all that stuff in order. And yeah, it's stressful. You know, we're trying to deal with other stuff. We're trying to deal with our families. We're trying to deal with loss of revenue. But we need to, like I said, we need to fight to get through this, and we need to have everything in place so that we can get access to this money. Otherwise, you know, somebody else is going to be ahead of you that's better prepared. So let's talk about, that's the introduction pretty much. And again, yeah, it's a scary time. You know, I wake up stressed out, heart beating, thinking about what to do for today, how to help people, what to do in my business. And I'm sure a lot of people are going through that. And so, but, you know, there's definitely hope. There's definitely availability to try to access these funds and put that back in your business so that you can stabilize and you pay your bills and do what you need to do. So what's available now and what's available coming up? So like I said, the disaster loan program, that's been available for 2 or 3 weeks. We can already start applying. We can already start getting in line with that. And that's going kids for employees that are sick at home. You now have the ability to withdraw from retirement accounts without penalty up to $100,000. We can defer payroll taxes. The new law that just passed, there's going to be stuff in there that's we're still waiting on to become available. You know, the forgivable loans, also, excuse me. You know, people are calling these different things. They have official names. You know, the disaster loan program is under the SBA 7B program. The forgivable loans are under the SBA 7A program. The portion in here that's most interesting to people is going to be the payroll protection program. And I'm trying to keep things simple, and I'm just going to talk about basically 2 names. You know, we're going to either try to go through both avenues or whichever one fits us best. So I'm going to talk about the disaster loan program. I'm going to talk about the forgivable loan program, and just kind of keep those terms a little bit more simple. So the forgivable loans, the ones you don't have to pay back, you can access up to $10 million. Again, I'll talk about how to get that calculation here in a minute. Part of this disaster loan program, what just became approved this past weekend, was the ability to get an emergency grant. So as soon as you apply for a disaster loan, the law says you're supposed to get the 10K within 3 days. We don't know yet when their 3-day starting time is. We thought, okay, we press the button, we press apply, and 3 days from now we get it. It doesn't look like that's happening. It's looking like maybe something internal within the SBA. Again, I think banks, SBA, the government, people behind the scenes, I think everybody's kind of scrambling with new laws, the health situation, all these things. And so we just have to see what happens. You know, none of this has ever been done before. None of this on this massive scale has ever been, you know, mobilized before. You know, maybe World War II was the biggest mobilization we ever had in this country, you know, around one single activity. But you know, this is pretty crazy, you know, coming down all at one time. And so with the new law, we also get to defer our payroll taxes for up to 2 years. So meaning any employer portion of payroll taxes, you can defer and wait to pay half of it at the end of 2021, and the remaining amount at the end of 2022. If you had losses in your business in past years, net operating losses, carry forwards, NOLs, they're making it easier for you to amend your tax return and take those losses back. That way you can take those losses and apply them to profitable years going 5 years back. And that way that could help you get some cash back from prior years, right? So that's a little tool that's available to some people, definitely not all if you didn't have losses, but that is available. So that's an analysis that should be done in looking at your past tax returns, double checking what's going on there. There's an employee retention credit up to $10,000 per employee. That's going to be within, you know, a payroll tax credit. Again, some of these details are still coming out. We're really focusing right now on disaster loan programs and forgivable loans. And then as kind of we get a little bit more breathing room, we're going to focus more on some of these other things that can help you get cash along the way. And what's coming up? Like I said, I think, you know, depending on the situation, maybe even in the best case scenario, they're going to have another stimulus bill. They're going to want to jumpstart the economy, whether that's through an infrastructure bill or through something else. So something else is going to come down the line within the next probably 4 to 6 months, if not sooner. So let's talk about the details on how these get calculated and what that could look like for you. So let's talk about the forgivable loan program. You know, I think that's kind of top of mind for everybody because that's kind of coming out right now. This is the newest thing that's been available, and it's kind of also a kind of amazing thing that, you know, had you told me this would exist 3 months ago, I don't think I would have believed it. And so what's going on here is that businesses can apply up to $10 million. And once you get the money, as of the origination date, you have 8 weeks to use that money for payroll, rent, utilities, and business mortgage interest. And if you use it for those qualified expenses in that 8-week period, you do not have to pay it back. And unlike any other type of debt that, you know, canceled debt, you have to count as income. This, you do not have to count as income. So it's basically just free money, right? And it's, you know, you think about how our system works in the US compared to how it works in some other countries, it kind of makes sense. You kind of have to do it this way in the US. You know, other, you know, European countries, or for example, you know, I have clients that have companies in Sweden and Norway, for example, and they, you know, there the government knows everybody's bank account. You know, if they want to do a stimulus bill, they just basically give everybody $5,000 or $10,000 direct deposit. You know, we don't really have that system in this country. We're more focused on, you know, having banks be the mechanism and having businesses be the mechanism to circulate cash around. And so, you know, this is basically a mechanism to make sure we give money to companies so companies can pay their bills, they can pay their suppliers, they can pay their employees, they can hire back employees. So if you've already laid somebody off or furloughed somebody off, you can bring them back and pay them in that 8-week period, right? The idea is like, let's keep the money circulating, like I said earlier. So we had to develop this mechanism to get that money in people's hands. So yeah, it's, You read that correctly. You don't have to pay it back if you use it correctly. Now, there's the issue, right? There's kind of a sticking point there, right? How do you get that money? How do you qualify for it? As far as we know right now, there's no credit check. Now, banks, individual banks, this is the part that's going through banks. The disaster loan program is going directly to government, directly to SBA. This is going through banks. So banks, individual banks may have more restrictive qualifications. I know not all banks are taking on all customers. A lot of banks are just working with their clients that they already have. Again, some banks are being more restrictive, saying, okay, yeah, if you're a client, we're working with you on this, but you have to have a business checking account and you have to have a business credit card, right? So banks are allowed to be more restrictive to what they can do. And so maybe that means looking for a different bank, looking for a smaller bank, looking for a credit union potentially. We're reaching out to several lenders. We're reaching out to like non-banks, meaning like commercial lenders, people that would do like, kind of commercial loans that have experience doing SBA loans, but they may be a little bit more, lenient on certain factors. So, kind of have to see how your bank deals with that and how other banks have what their qualifications are.
Can I interrupt you with one question that
Yes.
popped up here before we go too much further? The question is, does the $10 million loan, forgivable loan, apply to 501c3s? Are there any limits on size of business or current losses?
I don't work with nonprofits, so I haven't really, hasn't really been in my mind. My understanding, I don't know. I don't want to give you wrong information, so I don't know. I could get back to you potentially. I think this is just for businesses. So again, I don't work with nonprofits, so it hasn't been something I focused on answering that question. So
Kim and Simon, it does apply to 501c3s.
Perfect. Great. So again, this loan money, of course, you can't just get it. You can't just get $10 million if you want it. The calculation is based on the size of your business and what you're paying your current payroll. Now, earlier in the week, we thought we could also include, based on guidance, based on rulings we saw, we thought you could include in that calculation money you pay to independent contractors plus your payroll. But guidance just came out last night under the SBA's interim final guidance. We're still waiting on the final guidance. So the calculation is 2.5 times your average monthly payroll. And the look back period is January 31st of this year, going back 12 months. So January 31st is kind of when they are, deeming that's the beginning of the crisis. So in order to get the loan, you're going to need your payroll information to be up to date. You're going to go through an underwriting process. And very importantly, for this loan to be forgiven, you need to make sure you have good accounting in place. You need to make sure that you're tracking those expenses, because they're going to want to see an accounting package. They're going to want to see the receipts. So most likely, and what I'm recommending is like to have it just kind of be as simple and clean as possible. Probably set up a separate bank account for that money. If you have an accounting system set up, it's also fairly easy to kind of track those expenses by, category for this purpose. And so, you have to make sure you do that correctly, because people are going to make mistakes. This is going to happen. We're going to see stories where somebody thought one thing and they're doing another, and they didn't do it right, and then they're going to have to pay back money that, if they had done it right, would have been forgiven. So here's the part of the law, the maximum loan amount. We're looking at the average monthly payroll over the last 12 months times 2.5. There's some restrictions regarding people that make over $100,000. And so that their salary and wages under 100K are still included. There's just kind of like a little phase out calculation. And we have a payroll calculator that we work with our individual clients on to figure that out. Yeah, maybe any questions right now regarding specifically this forgivable loans? This says, my understanding right now, again, the portions you use to have those qualified expenses, to pay for those qualified expenses in the 8-week period, that gets forgiven, that you don't have to pay back. Any amount that's left over or you don't use it for those qualified expenses converts to a regular loan. They were saying that was going to be, well, it started at 4%. And then a couple days ago, they said they would lower that to 0.5%. And then like maybe today or last night, banks were saying, well, that's too cheap because that's, you know, cheaper than we can even access funds. And so right today, what I saw was 1%. So whatever it is, it's pretty cheap money. Any amount, again, any amount that you don't use for those qualified expenses converts to a regular loan, and you don't have to start making payments for 6 months.
There's one question here, Simon. Does this still include any type of contractor?
Yeah, so earlier in the week, we understood the guidance to be you could include independent contractors into this calculation along with payroll, because the law said some wording like anything you pay for compensation, tips, things like that. So we were thinking you could include that. As of last night, some new guidance came out with that interim final ruling. Again, this may change again. And we're seeing it's only payrolled employees. And as far as qualified expenses, what you can spend the money on in order for it to be forgiven, again, initially we thought you could pay independent contractors and have that portion be forgiven, but it seems like maybe right now that's not the case. So I think things are still developing. And again, that's maybe why some banks are hesitating right now. You know, Chase Bank said, oh, we're going to be available to take applications on Friday. Well, last night they said, no, just kidding. We're going to do it next week when we get the final guidance. So again, this is new to everyone. And I think in the background, people are still kind of scrambling to put the rules in place. Just like any law that gets passed, especially something of this magnitude. You know, when the 2017 tax law, the Tax Act got passed, you know, it's basically the politicians are saying, we want this to happen. We want this outcome. We want these things. And then you have to have the IRS or the Treasury or whatever responsible department make the actual rules of how the mechanisms are going to work. So we still have to see what some of those things look like. Now with the
more questions, Simon, if you don't mind. The first one is, can the independent contractor with no employee or payroll apply for this?
Right. So an independent contractor with no employees, yeah, you're going to have a little bit more difficult situation accessing this. You know, I'm not entirely clear right now if the net profit from business, like if you're an independent contractor, if your individual income would factor into that calculation. It doesn't seem like it, right? Because you don't have a payroll. Again, the concept, you know, going back, looking at the concept, looking at the purpose of this particular program was to get money into employees' hands, get money into people's hands. And so that mechanism that we're using is funnel the money through the business, have the business pay their employees. And so employees have money to pay their rent and put money back in the economy. So it doesn't really seem like self-employed people that just don't have employees. I think they're going to have a harder time accessing this particular program. Again, things are subject to change, and we'll see what, you know, if there's more clear guidance coming out.
And there's one last question. Can payroll employees be full-time and part-time?
Yes. Yeah.
That's it.
Based on the total salary amount. The loan is based on the total salary, the average monthly salary. The disaster loan program. This one we have a pretty good understanding of. Again, it's not been funded yet because it takes time. So we haven't seen a complete process yet. We haven't seen a full cycle of this yet, but we can look back and look at other disaster loans and we can see how those worked out. And our back office team has been calling the SBA with questions every day and even calling them multiple times to talk to different people within the SBA offices and double checking the answers, sometimes getting conflicting answers even within, calling the next day. But the cool thing is we've been able to generate kind of a 50-page frequently asked questions, and we have a pretty good idea of how this works. Now, the disaster loan program, this is where you can apply up to $2 million. And you can use this to fund all business operations except for growth. Like you can't go, do a new market or do a new product or something like that. But inside of your existing business, again, if that product makes sense for that business at that time, it's like they want you to pay your bills. They want you to survive. Again, not really meant to, fund growth like a traditional loan might. But that being said, if you're using these funds for paying your bills, paying your outstanding accounts payable, paying your credit lines, paying the leases on your equipment, then of course, if you're bringing in new money, then you can use that money to help pivot or fund growth or a new line of direction for your business. So this loan you do have to pay back. It's at 3.75%. And the loan terms are generally going to be 5 or 7 years, or for larger amounts, 15, even up to 30 years. So that's pretty cool. Again, there's this grace period of paying it back, 6 months to 12 months. And you can get both loans. Okay. So there's conflicting information out there. People were saying you can't get both loans. And, people came back and said, oh, my bank told me I can't do one, I have to do the other or something. You can get both. If you qualify for both, you can do both. However, you cannot use both for the same things. If you get both, then the disaster loan should be used for things other than payroll, rent, utilities, etc. You want to use the forgivable loan for those qualified expenses. Obviously, you want to do that so you can get that loan forgiven. And then you use the disaster loan for other operating expenses. And on certain pre-existing SBA loans, if you already have existing loans from the past, the SBA will pay the principal, interest, and fees on those loans for 6 months. So these are available today. They've been available for 2 or 3 weeks. And we're definitely still helping people apply for this. The forgivable loans are, coming as early as today. I just saw a notification that somebody in our group was able to get their client approved. Not sure yet what bank they use, but I saw that they had their client get approved for something like $1 million in forgivable loans. Obviously that's going to be a bigger company because you have to look at that calculation on their amount of payroll. But I think definitely by next week, the major banks are probably going to be ready. And then this is going to be a process that's still rolling out to certain banks. So we may not even see everybody, maybe not everybody is going to make this available. Or if they do, it's going to be later in the month. So we'll have to see what happens. So again, the forgivable loan is the SBA partnering with other banks. Here's some other key provisions of what's going on in the bill. Again, I mentioned these earlier, the ability to defer your payroll taxes for 2 years, getting a rebate on your, through your tax return. It's looking like if you filed your 2018 tax return already in the past, hopefully you did. And some people are like, I'm getting calls of people that haven't filed taxes in 3 years. So, you want to make sure your taxes are filed. And if you have on your tax return, you have the option to put your bank information, right? To have direct deposit of refunds or direct debits of tax payments. If you have the bank information on your tax return, then they're going to direct deposit this amount into your bank account. If you do not have the bank information on your tax return, they're going to be sending out checks, and that's going to be a slow process. And I read something today about, if you're getting a check, you might not get that till August. Again, this is kind of a nice to have. In California, this is not going to do much. This is like barely renting a room in San Francisco. And for business owners, the other provisions, getting a loan is going to be a little bit more interesting. Now, the thing that is, like I was saying earlier, once you apply for the disaster loan, you can get a $10,000 cash advance within 3 days. The interesting thing about this is even if you are denied the disaster loan, your credit's not good, or you don't submit the right financials, or they deem you don't have the ability to repay, or something something like that. It's going to go through like a pretty normal underwriting process. If your loan does not get approved, then you get to keep the 10K. So this is the 10K cash, emergency cash grant that you might be reading about. Okay. So again, a lot of things going on out there. People call me, ask questions, and they say, what about this? What about this? Well, again, to make it simple, I'm kind of saying there's two paths. The disaster loan, the forgivable loan, you can do both. And within the disaster loan, you can get this $10,000 advance. Okay. Again, you can take money out from your retirement accounts up to $100,000, and you don't have to pay the 10% early withdrawal penalty. The process looks kind of like this that we're seeing with our clients. We're having a call with them, we're getting information with them, we're submitting the initial application with the SBA, and within 3, 4, 5 weeks, we expect loan officers to reach out to us. Whatever they're going to do it by email, sounds like. So we're putting in an email address, and then we're monitoring that email address for correspondence from the loan officer. And then at this process, that's where they're, initially when this came out, they were expecting people to fill out all the forms at once and submit them in the beginning. They realized that that was just an information overload for people and for the system. And people were just doing it wrong, to be frank. And so what they're doing is they have the easy application. If you go on the SBA disaster website right now, you can do the easy kind of sign up. But that doesn't mean anything. That doesn't mean that you're going to actually get your loan approved. That doesn't mean you're going to get any money. It can mean if you check that box, you're going to get the 10K, right? But it doesn't mean anything else for your loan. So within that time period, now you have some breathing room. You have about 2, 3, 4, 5 weeks to fill out the forms correctly, get your financials in order, get your bookkeeping up to date, get the profit and loss statement for last year, make sure you have a clean balance sheet, make sure you get some profit and losses for this year, right? So we can show, here's our last year's results, and here's how we're affected this year. And that can factor into how much you're going to get for the disaster loan. In general, the disaster loan is being calculated on your gross profits. So again, gross profit is your sales minus your cost of goods sold, like material costs and supplies and anything that goes into providing the product or service. So sales minus cost of goods sold, that's your gross profit. So they're not looking at net profit. You could have had a negative net profit, but your gross profit, we're understanding that they are lending about 50% of your gross profit. The basic concept being to help you get through 2, 3, 4 months of expenses. And again, that's a regular loan. That's what you pay back, 3.75%, no payments for 6 to 12 months, and the terms vary on the loan size. So that's kind of what we see right now. And, you know, we're definitely here to help. You know, reach out to your financial team that you have in place. And, you know, if you have a good financial team, you know, work with them. That's great. You know, we want to make sure people know about this and that they are filling out these forms correctly. And, you know, you're going to have to fill out the forms. You're going to have to submit profit and loss statements and personal financial statements showing all your assets and all your liabilities. And those are things that we're doing for our clients under this, you know, giving them a forgivable loan package and putting the whole package together for the forgivable loans as well as disaster loans. So yeah, any questions?
Look here, it looks like there's another question. It's a link, the application for the newest loan form. Someone just put in a PDF form here from the hometreasury.gov, the Paycheck Protection Program application link.
And that's something we saw a sample of that earlier this week, and we're getting familiar with that. Yeah, basically just be prepared to answer those questions. Again, some banks may have more restrictions and some may have less. So, but that's kind of the starting point with that application.
Okay. There's 2 other questions here. To be eligible to have the CARES Act loan forgiven, besides using proceeds for qualifying expenses, does the borrower also need to have all of its employees on payroll at the end of the 8-week period?
So you have to spend the money on qualifying expenses. You can have, this is what I understand right now, you can have the same employees, you can hire new employees. You can rehire people that you laid off or furloughed. As long as you, within that time period, you're spending it on those qualified expenses. We're still trying to see, like, okay, what happens if we prepay some payroll? Can we do that, right? Can we get a little maybe creative about this, right? Can we do an advance or a bonus within that period? Is that going to be allowed, or is that going to be looked at strangely? So again, we want to make sure we're exploring all these ideas and seeing what's available and what's not. You know, of course, we're going to want you to do the right thing and track those expenses and do what you need to do and follow the rules. But again, we would just want to explore all these avenues. And so you definitely need to spend the money within that 8-week period. Otherwise, if you don't, whatever's left over converts to a regular loan. So you don't need to hire everyone back. You may not have a need to hire everyone back. Again, that money can be used for payroll, rent, utilities, and business mortgage interest.
Okay. On the application, it asks for a number of jobs. Is this part-time or full-time?
I would say include them both, just add them up the sum total. Start with that. You know, so if you have 2 part-time, 2 full-time, I would say 4. I'm not sure if they're looking for full-time equivalent. It's not what we've seen so far, but I would put 4 jobs.
And then a comment here from Vicky from the Post. She's saying that she believes they have to be back on payroll by June 1. And B of A is currently accepting apps. Wells Fargo is still not ready.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, as far as the date, you know, there's some information I saw on that this week. I don't remember quite what that looks like, but again, with our clients that we're working with, we're going to make sure we follow the right process on that. But yeah, the big thing is the 8 weeks from when you get the loan.
And then a question here, what does secular social services provided by faith-based entity mean? It's one of the questions on the app.
Yeah, so one of the, so if you're doing the, that's a question that comes up on the application on the disaster loan website. If you are a organization, a faith-based organization, then that answer would be applicable to you. If you're a regular business, then that doesn't apply to you. And you just can, I would say anything that you can, make sure you fill it out, whether it's a 0 or you put NA for not applicable. Those ones, the ones we've been doing for clients for that particular question, we just put NA. So unless you're a church or a faith-based organization or something like that.
Are there any other questions?
I'm just going to include in the chat, we have another meeting following this, Government Affairs with Anthony Carnesecca for the city of Los Altos. So I'm just going to put that in the chat if anyone would like to join after this.
Yeah, and if you need further help, reach out to us. We have a website. You can schedule appointments, very easy. We have kind of a rolling appointments for the SBA help and disaster loan information. So you may go on there and somebody said, hey, you don't have any appointments for the rest of April. Well, I'm kind of rolling it out. I don't want to just have my whole April get booked up all at once. So if you don't see an availability, check back the next day because it kind of refreshes day by day. Otherwise, feel free to send an email. You can just email hello@kaufmannadvisors.com. Again, going through the website, scheduling a quick call or a meeting on there. There's also a chat bot on there. So, I get those messages directly, and, make sure you say, I saw you at the Los Altos Chamber. And that way I kind of keep that in mind, and I'll respond to you a little quicker since you guys gave me this opportunity to talk to you. So make sure you mention that either in your email or in the chat bot, and then I can help you out.
Super. Well, thank you, Simon. We really appreciate your presentation and answering these questions for us. It's very helpful in a difficult time, so appreciate that very much.
Again, I wish everybody the best of luck and success and trying to overcome this and pivoting your business or doing whatever you can. Again, this is time to work and work on ourselves and work on our businesses and take care of ourselves.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks so much. Have a great day.
All right. Thank you, Simon.
Okay. Bye-bye.